Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, let's just jump right in with something pretty stark. There are these projections, right? They estimate that the number of adults in the U.S. with cognitive impairment could nearly double by 2060.
Yeah, it's a huge projected increase from something like 18 million just a few years ago to potentially over 35 million. It's a massive health challenge heading our way.
Exactly. Not just a number, it affects, well, potentially all of us as we get older.
It really does. And so in this deep dive, we wanted to get into something specific about how things like not getting the right nutrients or eating diets that cause inflammation, how those can actually speed up brain aging.
Right, accelerate it. And crucially, what we can maybe do about it.
Precisely. What actions can you actually take?
So to figure this out, we looked at quite a bit of research, some really solid studies from places like Columbia University, Queen's University, Belfast, journals like Translational Psychiatry,
University College London, Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience.
Yeah, good sources. And they're really digging into the nitty-gritty, the links between food, inflammation, specific nutrients or lack of them, and how our brains hold up over time.
This isn't just generic eat healthy advice then. It's about understanding the mechanisms.
Exactly. The goal is to get past the headlines and see how your food choices might be impacting your brain's resilience, for better or worse. Knowing this really empowers you, doesn't it, to make informed choices?
Okay, so where do we start? What's the foundational link here between, say, the aging brain and what's going on inside us?
Well, I think a really central piece, one that keeps coming up, is inflammation.
Okay.
There's this growing understanding that chronic, kind of low-level inflammation is a major factor in age-related brain issues. We're talking general cognitive decline, but also conditions like Alzheimer's.
Like a slow burn damaging things over time.
That's a great way to put it. Like a persistent smoldering fire in the background that harms delicate brain cells. And this isn't just like arthritis inflammation. This is actually affecting the brain itself.
Precisely. Yeah, some really interesting work from Columbia University.
Yeah.
Actually measured specific inflammatory markers in older people's blood things called IL-6 and CRP. And they found that higher levels of these markers were linked to, well, more significant cognitive decline and even measurable brain atrophy.
Brain atrophy, shrinkage. That sounds, pretty concerning.
It is. And then there's a review from Queen's University, Belfast that kind of paints the broader picture. They explain how this ongoing brain inflammation can trigger a whole cascade of bad stuff.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, things like amyloidosis. That's the buildup of those sticky protein plaques you hear about with Alzheimer's.
Right.
Actual death of neurons, thinning of the cortex, that crucial outer layer of the brain, reduced overall brain volume, and just, general neurodegeneration. It's all interconnected.
Wow. Okay, so inflammation seems like a really key villain in speeding up brain aging. How does our everyday diet play into this then?
Okay, yeah, that's the next logical step, isn't it? How does what we eat influence that inflammation? So researchers talk about inflammatory diets. These are typically diets higher in things like red and processed meats, lots of fried foods, refined grains, white bread, pastries.
Usual suspects, maybe?
Kind of, yeah. And they tend to be low in fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Harvard Health has good summaries, and that University College London study backs this up too.
Okay, but how does eating a burger and fries translate to inflammation in the brain? It feels like a big leap.
It does, but the link is more systemic. So these diets are known to increase inflammation throughout the body. General, systemic inflammation.
Oh, fair.
And that systemic inflammation can then affect the brain. The Queen's University review and the Translational Psychiatry study both talk about the different ways this can happen. It's not like the fat goes directly to your brain cells, but the inflammatory signals do, or they affect the environment around the brain.
Got it. So body-wide inflammation triggered by diet can then negatively impact the brain. What about the opposite? Are there diets that do the reverse, that protect the brain?
Absolutely, yes. That's the encouraging part. We have what are often called anti-inflammatory diets. Think the Mediterranean diet or the DSH diet.
Right, I've heard of those. Lots of plants, fish.
Exactly. Both the Columbia study and the Queen's review really highlight these. They're packed with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, fish, poultry, and healthy fats like olive oil.
The good stuff. So what is it in those diets that makes them protective? Why do they help slow down brain aging?
A huge part of it is the specific nutrients they provide. We're talking about things like omega-3 fatty acids, loads of different antioxidants, and these compounds called polyphenols found in plants.
Yeah.
these nutrients seem to have neuroprotective qualities. And one of the main ways they work is by actively helping to sort of dampen down or inhibit that neuroinflammation we were talking about.
Okay, this is where it gets super interesting for me. It's not just eat your veggies, it's the power of specific nutrients inside them. And if you don't get enough, that deficiency could be accelerating the aging.
Precisely. You've hit it exactly. The Columbia University study gave us some really strong clues here. They looked at older adults and found those who consistently ate more of certain nutrients. Let me see.
Yeah, which ones?
Omega-3s, calcium, folate, a bunch of B vitamins, B1, B2, B5, B6, plus vitamin D and vitamin E.
Okay, quite a list.
Yeah, and the people getting more of these had, well, first, lower levels of those inflammatory markers, CRP and IL-6 we mentioned.
That makes sense.
But maybe even more striking, they also showed more gray matter volume in their brains.
Really? More actual gray matter?
Yeah, and they performed better on certain cognitive tests, specifically visuospatial ones, like understanding relationships between objects in space.
Wow. So a measurable difference in brain structure and function linked to these nutrients.
Exactly. And the researchers themselves suggested that maybe this better preserved gray matter is a key reason why getting enough of these nutrients leads to better cognition as people age.
So, flipping that around, if we're consistently deficient in these, maybe through a poor diet over years, we could actually be kind of starving our brain of what it needs to maintain itself, speeding up decline.
That's a very good way to put it. The evidence strongly suggests that connection. These deficiencies aren't just theoretical. They seem to translate into real physical changes that look a lot like accelerated brain aging. It really drives home how vital it is to consistently feed our brain the right stuff.
Okay. Now, I remember reading about something called the Dietary Inflammatory Index, or DII, in the research. What's that about?
Ah, yes, the DII. It's basically a tool researchers developed to try and quantify the overall inflammatory potential of someone's entire diet, not just single foods. That Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience study used it.
So it gives you a score, like how pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory your eating pattern is overall?
Exactly that. A higher positive score means your diet is generally more pro-inflammatory. More of those red meats, fried foods, refined carbs we talked about. A lower score or even a negative score means it's leaning anti-inflammatory. Lots of fruits, veggies, fiber, healthy fats.
And did they link this DII score to brain health in older people?
They did, yeah. In this study on older Americans, they found a pretty clear link. Higher DII scores, meaning more inflammatory diets, were associated with a greater risk of cognitive impairment.
In what ways? Like general fogginess or specific skills?
It seemed particularly noticeable in areas like attention, how fast you process information, and working memory. Holding things in your mind to work with them.
So eating an inflammatory diet might actually slow down your thinking and make it harder to focus.
That's certainly what the findings suggest. And it was interesting, it wasn't just a straight linear thing. The risks seemed to jump up quite a bit once the DII score got past a certain threshold.
Whoa, like a tipping point. Your diet hits a certain level of inflammatoriness and the risk to your brain really escalates.
It kind of looks that way, yeah. A sobering thought, like you said. And they also found some potential subgroup differences.
Oh, like who?
Well, their data suggested that maybe older adults, specifically those over 75, and also women, might be even more susceptible to the negative brain effects of a high DII score, a highly inflammatory diet.
That's really important. So dietary choices might become even more critical for brain health in certain groups as they age.
It seems plausible, yeah. It highlights that we probably need to consider individual factors too.
Okay, so we get that inflammatory diets and lacking key nutrients are bad news for the brain. But how? What are the actual ways this happens? How does the food turn into brain changes?
Right, the mechanisms. There seem to be a few key pathways working together. First, the diet can directly increase neuroinflammation.
Inside the brain itself.
Yeah. Eating inflammatory foods can trigger the release of these signaling molecules, cytokines, that promote inflammation. And these cytokines can either cross the blood-brain barrier directly or affect the barrier itself, making it leakier, letting inflammatory stuff in. Both the Frontiers and Queen's University sources talk about this.
Okay, so direct inflammatory signals getting into the brain. What else?
Second, these diets often mess with our metabolism. They increase the risk for things like type 2 diabetes, unhealthy cholesterol levels, metabolic syndrome overall. And we know those metabolic problems are themselves major risk factors for brain disorders. So the diet causes metabolic issues, which then harm the brain. That translational psychiatry study really highlighted this connection.
Ah, so it's an indirect hit too, through messing up the body's metabolism.
Exactly. And then there's a third really fascinating area, the gut microbiome.
Our gut bacteria.
Yep, billions of them. And what we eat dramatically shapes which bacteria thrive in our gut. An inflammatory diet can lead to an unhealthy balance, what they call dysbiosis. And this imbalance in gut bacteria can fuel inflammation throughout the body, and it seems to directly influence neuroinflammation too. Both Queen's University and Frontiers mention this gut-brain axis.
Wow, the gut connection is huge, isn't it?
It really is. And conversely, diets like the Mediterranean diet seem to encourage more beneficial gut bacteria. Oh, and one more thing, that translational psychiatry study, they basically concluded that inflammation acts as a key mediator, meaning it sits in the middle. The inflammatory potential of the diet leads to inflammation, and that inflammation then leads to changes in brain structure and increases the risk for brain disorders. It's like the crucial link in the chain.
So if we can control the inflammation through diet, we might break that chain and protect the brain.
That's the hope, and what the research strongly points towards. Targeting inflammation via diet seems like a really promising strategy for healthier brain aging.
This is all incredibly valuable, so let's bring it home. For someone listening right now thinking, okay, I get it, what do I actually do? What are the main dietary takeaways to help avert this faster brain aging?
Okay, yeah, the practical steps. It really boils down to shifting towards whole, unprocessed foods as much as possible.
Like what specifically?
Load up on a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. Different colors mean different nutrients. Choose whole grains, brown rice, quinoa, oats instead of white, refined versions. Go for lean proteins like fish and chicken, and definitely include healthy fats, especially things like olive oil. Basically, you're aiming for something that looks a lot like that Mediterranean or DAS style of eating.
And what about those specific nutrients that Columbia study linked to better brain structure, like the omega-3s and B vitamins? How important is it to focus on those?
Very important. You want to make sure you're getting enough omega-3s fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines are great, or walnuts and flax seeds. Calcium is key. Folate from leafy greens and beans, those B vitamins we listed, vitamin D, vitamin E. A balanced whole foods diet should cover a lot of this, but it's worth being mindful. Because remember, lacking these isn't just neutral. The deficiency itself seems to contribute to the aging process we want to slow down.
Right. And the flip side, what are the main things to actively limit or avoid the inflammatory culprits?
Yeah, definitely try to cut back on red meat, especially processed meats like sausages and deli meats. Limit high-fat dairy, saturated fats in general, deep-fried foods, and those sugary drinks and refined grain products, white bread, pastries, sugary cereals. Reducing those is a big step towards cooling down inflammation.
Makes sense.
And, making these changes consistently is key. If you're looking for some extra support to really nail that anti-inflammatory approach and ensure you're getting those vital brain nutrients, we've actually gathered some resources. You can check out the description below this deep dive. We've linked some curated health products designed to help fuel your brain and body the right way. Because ultimately, even small, steady shifts toward eating more of the good stuff and less of the inflammatory stuff can really add up over time for your brain health and healthy aging.
Absolutely. So just to quickly wrap up the main points, there's pretty convincing evidence now linking inflammatory diets and nutrient shortfalls to faster brain aging. It's a real connection.
But, and this is the crucial part, it also means that our dietary choices give us real power, real potential to positively influence our cognitive health trajectory as we get older.
Yeah, which kind of leads to a final thought, doesn't it?
It does. Maybe something for you listening to reflect on. Given how much diet seems to impact your brain, what's maybe one small, achievable change you could make, starting today, to better nourish your cognitive future?
That's a great question to leave people with. Definitely food for thought. And yeah, as you said, for practical ways to support those changes, especially getting those key brain nutrients, do check out the curated health product links in the description.
Here's to making choices that support a sharp, healthy brain for years to come.